Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nהיה bidbareh. Chaim v'chaim v'bracha. Right. So, right? In the verse that we're talking about, Tzion b'mishpat, Tzion, Zion, b'mishpat, in judgment, in the judgment according to the law, to the strict rule of law, Tipada, there will be redemption. V'shaveh ha'b'tzedakah, and those that return um, will be with through charity. So what we said is the Jewish people are called Zion because they engage in study of Torah, divine service, exemplified by prayer today, and acts of loving kindness, which is the generality of Torah mitzvahs. And as they're doing that, they become a tzion, a sign, a signpost, a banner, a reflection of the divine. And simply put, as a result, just like a sign on a lost object means it's got an owner, right? In other words, an identifying mark, something that is clearly an identifying mark that it belongs to someone, means you have an obligation to return it to its owner. So the Jewish people, through Torah mitzvahs, they exemplify, they personify, they reflect, they become identifying mark that they have an owner. They belong to God. And not only that, but through exile, not only that, we don't get lost in exile amongst the nations, which would be very easy too, which of course there has been throughout the ages, assimilation, but the very fact, this is one of the proofs that there is a God. How? Because there's a Jewish people. We're exiled amongst all the nations, many nations of the world. And yet, Jews uphold their Judaism. Now, of course, there are Jews that do assimilate and have assimilated throughout the centuries. No question. But there is no other people that have been exiled from their homeland and exist today. Doesn't exist such a thing. That's pretty awesome. The Romans were defeated eventually. The Greeks were defeated. The Egyptians were defeated. They don't exist anymore as they did before. There's a country called Rome, right? But it's not the same culture, not the same people, not the same faith. Although Rome did take upon itself Christianity, but that brought to their downfall. Ultimately, they had their downfall. But they just brought it upon just to keep the masses happy. It was their cake. Give them cake, right? You don't have the Greeks in Greece are not the Greeks of Hellenist Greeks from back in the day. But the Jews, and forget in Greece, that's not the point over here. The point over here is the Jewish people have been exiled into many, many countries and still remain Jews. And it sounds like unbelievable. That is Zion. That is a simon. That is an identifying mark because of our Torah mitzvahs that we kept throughout the ages, throughout the centuries. Um, made us stand out. For some, for some people, that was a cause of anti-Semitism, of course. But that's not the point here. But that's not even the point of the verse. The point of the verse is that in exile, we need to be redeemed, and we're redeemed on two levels. One, that we don't allow the 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 um, the challenges, the walls of the ghetto, or the all of the things that we had to go through to get to us. As a matter of fact, we ascended to greater heights and to greater achievements. Out of all the ills and the evils that were perpetrated. And the reason for that is because we have our own stuff, our own negativity of an animal soul that we didn't embody, we didn't allow that to control us. So if that doesn't control us, no one on the outside can control us. And not only can control us, but actually it brought us to greater heights. We ascend to greater heights. Even greater heights than in the times of the Second Holy Temple. And that's because the light of our soul is so much more dark, stronger than the darkness of exile. And therefore, the darkness of the exile can conceal the Jew's connection. Right? Yet, that's because the light is greater than the darkness. But light is yet defined by darkness. I mean, light is defined that it's not darkness, and darkness not light. And therefore, the darkness from within, the darkness from without, is not an obstacle. Not only it's not an obstacle, it's something that we jump over. And we get to greater places, greater heights, greater accomplishment and achievements as an individual Jew and as a collective people. L'chaim. L'chaim, l'chaim. Now, the second level is even greater because it's about a transformation of the darkness. The darkness itself becomes a source of light. And that comes from the core essence of the divine, because the core essence of the divine, is God defined at all by light and darkness? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Right? And hence, since God's not defined by it, he's not limited by it. Think about that for a moment, folks. It's a really important thought, very important thought. God is not limited to light or dark. He's beyond both. And therefore, it's possible that from Atmos, the core essence of the divine, darkness itself can be a source of light. And therefore, it can illuminate. Perhaps that's the idea of a black hole, at least as a metaphor. But let's take this further, or let's inside of us, we get that, or any experience that was darkness. As I mentioned, yeah, I'm just reviewing from yesterday's class because it's very powerful. I want to make sure that we get the message clear. So this ties in with Sunday night's class that we spoke about on Tisha B'Av, which anybody that didn't hear it, didn't participate, I strongly suggest and urge you to go to YouTube and get the class there. It's quite powerful. Chaim. So we experience that sometimes things in our lives that it's darkness, and then we realize Gamzula Teva that this is also for good. This is for good, not a led to good, but this is for good. And sometimes we see our own challenge that we felt that was, ooh, this is a tough mountain to climb. But then we realize, I can recognize that darkness in me is really the source of light, which is an amazing achievement. Now, this verse is the end of last Shabbos Chazon, of the Haftorah from Yeshayahu. Sure, we say in English, Isaiah, Yeshayahu, better way to say it, which Yeshayahu comes from the word God's salvation. And it's, as its name, it's, hey, he is the embodiment, Isaiah, of God's salvation. So is his name, right? And therefore, in the Haftorah in Isaiah and Yeshayahu, at the end of it, right, it speaks about the final redemption, that there will be no more Galus, exile, after it. It's powerful. Can you imagine a moment that we're coming to, that there will be no more suffering, no more pain, no more war, no more famine, and that's just external. That's the way it'll be reflected in the world, but internally, darkness will be transformed. My darkness will be transformed into light, which of course then means everything in the world will be that way. If I am that way, and you are that way, and we're all that way, that's a pretty powerful transformation. That's what Mashiach means. And as a result, then, well, there's no possibility for darkness in the world anymore. Right. And this is how the verse continues, or maybe begins. Sorry. That Then in the days of Yechezkiyahu, Hashem wanted to make him Mashiach. Right? Ties in. In the end, he didn't merit, but now. So again, in Yeshayahu and Isaiah, so it's speaking about this great exaltedness of the final redemption that is to come, that will be, God willing, today, Mashiach now. And in this, there will be two levels of exaltedness, which is important because we believe the world is progressing, even though sometimes if you watch the news, you see what's going on, it doesn't seem to be. But that's individuals. That's not the collective whole. The silent majority are good people. In any case, so in this, the exaltedness is specifically in the second level, not merely that we hoop, where we jump over all the hoops and all the obstacles in life, and we don't let obstacles exist in our lives, right? No, those obstacles become the source of light. They're not darkness. Get over it. No, they're light themselves. That's the main purpose of exile that we come to. This is therefore what it means to padesh vishaveha, to be redeemed and returned, as the verse says. So what does that mean? We're made up of two parts, body and soul, and the verse is speaking about body and soul. The first part is speaking about the body, that it needs to be redeemed from exile, as it's Tzion b'mishpat padeh, that Zion will be referring here to the body of the individual, will be redeemed from exile, right? And likewise, the neshama will return from its place of exile. So the body is caught up in exile, right? So why? Because the body has its own agenda of comfort and pleasure seeking. That needs to be redeemed. That's going to be through judgment, and the soul will be through charity. So he explains. So the redemption of the body is that the body will become not in me, will not be something I've got to get over. It's going to be transformed. That the body and the animal soul too wants divine connection. It wants the divine connection. And therefore, when you transform it, it will get mishpat, according to what it deserves. Mishpat means judgment. Judgment means in accordance to the law, by the rule of law. In other words, by the rule of law, you transform yourself. That's a great accomplishment. You're getting something deserved. Totally deserve it, right? The soul, on the other hand, is going to get tzedakah, a charity. What does that mean? Tomorrow. Why is it getting charity? And the body's getting the rule of law. The way we learned previously was the opposite. Now we're learning it in a different way. But tomorrow, and we'll conclude the mimer tomorrow, God willing.